Folks, how's it going? Guess it's been a while. I've got 10 good albums to show you. I'm gonna call this show Soundtrack for the Lost Psychedelic Weekend. So you can take that any way you want. It's mostly electronic and instrumental album, but I do reserve the right to have some words in some of these. And some of them do. I went record shopping yesterday. It's been a long time. I needed some record sleeves, and there's this one shop that I go to that I like. It's my favorite one here in the area, and they always have sleeves. So I figured I'd go buy a couple records and pick up about 100 sleeves or whatever. And they didn't have the sleeves, but they did have these big, thick box set double album sleeves, which were fine with me. I picked those up as well. They're the record sits very loosely in it, but I don't care. I need some sleeves. I ordered some sleeves from a guy on the internet. Gosh, it had to have been 6 weeks ago. And I waited 2 weeks, and they never came. I emailed him. He says, wait, give it another week. Never came. He said, okay, I'll send you out another one. Waited 3 weeks. Never came. And I got an email from him. So it was kind of cryptic. I don't know if he was going to send more or send me my money back, but so far I haven't gotten either. But he's a good guy. I've dealt with him before. I think it's just unfortunate, maybe the post office or whatever. So, so I went to the record store and bought 4 records, and I'll show those later on. Yeah, it's interesting. Some of the stores that you go to, it's some folks are impeccably nice, very nice to you, and just will bend over backwards, but the records are dirty in their shop, or there are tons of bootlegs, or they're just way overpriced. But these guys I go to are very fair. Records are always clean. Even you can find a cheap record and you're like, what's wrong with this? You pull it out and it's impeccable. But they don't really give a shit. They'll be talking crap about their customers and you're standing there 2 feet away. It's like, you want to buy it? Buy it. If you don't, get out. So it's kind of interesting to listen to that. They probably, to my face, they seem cool. I don't know. Maybe when I walk out, they're like, geez, that guy, whatever. But, it doesn't matter. I will still go there because I'm going to buy a ton of records, and it's all about quality and money. If you can find that nice balance, that's what it's about. Not pulling the trigger too fast. So, soundtrack for a lost psychedelic weekend. First record is by a band called White Hills. It's called Heads on Fire. They're from New York. They came out in 2005, and I can't remember what the album was called. I think it's called We Got Blood Like You Have Blood, and it was on Julian Cope's Fuck Off and Die label. And Die spelled D-I, like Princess Diana. And I heard it, and that was the first time I heard of them back in 2005, and I thought, these guys are special. And then I looked them up a couple of years later, and they had like 5 more records. They're very prolific as far as putting out albums. And it's all very psychedelic space rock, mostly instrumental. They do some punk stuff where they sing. It's the core members are a man and a woman. I can't remember their names. Is it on the back here? It's not. But this one right here is from 2009. It's on the Thrill Jockey label, and it's very fuzzed out psychedelic space rock. Every song is just got that loud, distorted fuzz to it, but it's very calming. It's not grating like a lot of stuff that you might encounter. So I totally recommend this. It's kind of like a primer for your weekend to kind of get you started. Here's one from a band called Mushroom, and the album is called Psychedelic Soul on Wax. So Psychedelic Soul on Wax, not So on Wax. The album was really meant to be an EP, but it's like 40-something minutes long, so it's not. Let's start off with side 2. There's 4 songs on this. One song takes up the entire side of side 1, and it's 18 minutes and 44 seconds long. Side 2 starts off with Flesh Failures, Let the Sun Shine In. If you've ever seen the movie Hair or seen the play Hair, it's that song they sing at the end, let the sun shine in, and there's this big chorus and hippies jumping around everywhere. They do a version of this. It's a nice version. I don't know if they improve on the original, or when I say original, I mean the soundtrack version, which I've had since I was 10 years old. The year it came out, 1979, I bought it. It's one of the first records I bought. But it's still kind of cool that they put it on there, and I think there's a connection. They mentioned Timothy Leary, and there's a whole section on Timothy Leary on the first song. Then we go into the second song on side 2 called Sneak Attack, which is kind of a instrumental droney song. And then 4 called Bo Gong, which is a lot of the same thing. Now let's go to the first song. The one on side 1, the only one on side 1. It's called Psychedelics So on Wax, Ulrich Cleaver versus Timothy Leary. So if you've ever heard some of the Timothy Leary albums, like, what's the one I have? You Can Be Anything You Want, where Timothy is talking over psychedelic music. There's a bunch of musicians. I think he had Jimi Hendrix. I can't remember all who he had. And he's basically just kind of talking, and the cool groovy music's in the background. This is what it's like, but it's not Timothy Leary. It's Eldridge Cleaver from the Black Panther Party talking about Timothy Leary. Now, in 1970, Timothy Leary got busted for having 2 roaches on him, 2 marijuana roaches, and he got sentenced to 10 years in prison. And then on top of that, they threw another 10 years for something else. I can't remember what it is. Maybe a charge from 1965. So he had 20 years of prison, which is ridiculous. Anyway, the Underground Weather, or the Weather Underground, busted him out and took him to Algiers, where the Black Panthers were at, and they gave him refuge. After a couple of months, the honeymoon period was over, and Leary was really getting on their nerves, talking about dosing everybody in the world with LSD and all these crazy cockamamie ideas that he had that I'm sure clashed really with what the Black Panthers were trying to do at the time. And so it was a certain date. What day was it? January 12th, 1971. Eldridge Cleaver went on the radio and gave a speech about Leary, telling him that he was just whacked out and basically warning other hippies to stay away. We've had it with you, don't come back. And it works very well. I mean, it's psychedelic music, and you have him very elegantly bashing Timothy Leary. So I would say it's a nice piece to have in any psychedelic collection. Oh, one other thing. I know I've spent a lot of time on it, but why not? It comes on blue vinyl, which is very pretty. All right. On to the next one. Dick Hyman, Moog. This is called the Electric Elections of Dick Hyman, and this is pretty cool. It's a little cheesy at times. It's a Moog album. I'm pronouncing it wrong. It's a Moog album from 1969. This guy was already famous as a pianist, like a concert pianist, but he took on electronics in the late 60s. And can be a little sketchy, a little cheesy, but the really cool psychedelic parts outweigh all that. And that's what makes this album essential for psychedelic fans and electronic music fans. Yeah, I mean, there are parts that you're like, oh gosh, this could be in a cartoon, but there's some songs, you have like 13, 14-minute swaths where it's just brilliant psychedelic electronic, and you're just blowing your mind all over the place. So, if you're going to have a long psychedelic weekend, listening to instrumental music, that is essential. Philip Glass. You know, I'm not really into Glass. I've listened to a lot of his stuff, and this is my favorite. This is where he's, unless I've missed something, this is where he's the weirdest and the trippiest and the most psychedelic. Very experimental, but you can get into it. It doesn't turn you off. It kind of just pulls you in, really. It's, as you're listening to it, it's almost like a pulsation that pulls you into the music and almost into another realm. So, Philip Glass, North Star. I would say that this is essential. Speaking of North Star, how about Evening Star by Veneno? This is a good album. I'm not sure if pure ambient people would call it ambient, but when you listen to it, it sounds like ambient music. Side 2 is the big one. It's one song called Index of Metals. It's 28 minutes long, and it's kind of a droning piece that it's got guitar samples and tape loops, and they go back and around, and they kind of build on each other, and every time they get more and more distorted, and not so distorted you can't hear it, but you can hear the distortion level in it, and it's another one of those that just really pulls you in. I mean, you can't, this is music not to drive on, let's put it that way. Sit down in a cross-legged position and close your eyes and let the music do what it's going to do to you. Very good for a lost psychedelic weekend. We have a lot of electronic albums this weekend. Tontos Expanding Headband. Now this is great. I talk about early 70s electronics. I mean, it's like a lot of it sounds like what some of the buffer music for TV shows that you might hear, you know, in the early 70s. Really takes you back to that time. But it's not cheesy. I mean, these are really good compositions played by excellent people. It's not, Tontos Exploding Headband is not the name of the band, it's the name of the album. Robert Marjolieff and Malcolm Cecil are the players on this. And they play this huge instrument called the Tonto. Apparently it could fit in this room. I mean, it's huge. Now they bring it out every so often, but it's trippy, it's psychedelic, it's experimental, it's electronic, and would be excellent for your weekend. Edgar Froese, Stuntman. This is a good one. I don't know if it's one of in the realm of Tangerine Dream and Tangerine Dream side projects. It's probably could be in the top 10. You know, it just depends on what you like and who you are. I think it's pretty good. It's not incredibly mind-blowing, but it's almost like a come-down record in a way. So, Stuntman by Edgar Froese. Walter Carlos, Clockwork Orange. Now, there were a couple albums. There was an actual soundtrack album for the Clockwork Orange that had bits and pieces of his music, of Walter Carlos's music in it. But for the most part, it was like Beethoven's Sympathy. It had Gene Kelly singing in the rain. Stuff that wasn't a pure electronic album. This is a pure electronic album. Now, it does have some Beethoven on it. It's got William Tell Overture, the Ninth Sympathy from Beethoven. But for the most part, I mean, I think a lot of these are, I could be wrong on this. Some of these are Carlos's original composition, and some of these are just classical movements that he's been switched on. otherwise electrified. But it's great. Really something to listen to. And for the last two, Heroin and Tahiti. This is a band that I just kind of fell upon in the last couple of weeks. They're from Rome. There's two dudes in it, and they're on a label called Boring Machines. Boring as in I'm bored. But this is not boring music. This is psychedelic. I don't want to say surf because that turns it off so bad. It's kind of sunny and gloomy at the same time. Psychedelic music. It's electronic. It twists your mind, takes you all over the place. It's very accessible. I've read some reviews that you don't want to listen to all this in one sitting, but I don't see the problem. I've listened to it in about 5 or 6 sittings. I mean, if you're already into this, if you like head music, this is top notch. And if you have not heard Heroin in Tahiti, and the album's called Sun and Violence, listen to them. Really, check them out. They're really great. I know everything kind of goes back to krautrock. It's like, if you like krautrock, listen to this band. Well, pretty much any of these bands that I'm showed or am going to show today, if you like krautrock, you will like any of these bands. So write them down, check them out, listen to them on YouTube. You know, that's the whole point. I was trying to turn you guys on to something new, and that's why I watch your channels. It's because I'm constantly being turned on to cool stuff. And the last one that we have is Boards of Canada, Tomorrow's Harvest. This would be the Sunday night come down album from your last psychedelic weekend. It's a double album full of just incredible electronic blips and bloops, and it's almost like, in a way, it's like the Tontos Exploding Headband, but 40 years later. So it's, if you take, you know, that type of technology from that album, and then just beef it up with today's technology, you get this. Now, that's my opinion. Maybe the experts won't agree with me, but it kind of reminds me of that. Well, that's it, folks. That's it for the week. I hope you have a good week. Keep on spinning the vinyl. Keep listening to the music. And we'll see you next week. Take care.